Welcome back. And the battles between Daryl Dixon versus Jason Voorhees, determining the winner in a life and death confrontation between Daryl Dixon, the ultimate survivor and icon of the Walking Dead universe, and Jason Voorhees, the legendary immortal killing machine of the Friday the 13th series, is a challenging and fascinating task. Daryl Dixon operates within the biological limits of a human, albeit a human at peak physical condition, and survival will. Meanwhile, Jason Voorhees has transcended the boundaries of death, becoming a supernatural entity, bearing a curse and hatred within him. Let us begin.
First is the ultimate survivor. Daryl Dixon was not born with superhuman strength, was not injected with a genetic modification serum, and certainly has no connection to mystical forces. He is a completely ordinary human, forged in the crucible of the most brutal thing humanity has ever faced, the zombie apocalypse. Daryl's background is a tragedy. He grew up in a violent household, under the cruel hand of his alcoholic father, Will Dixon, and the neglect of his older brother, Merle. Daryl's childhood was days of hunger, beatings, and learning how to survive in solitude. When the apocalypse struck and the world collapsed, Daryl, with his wild instincts honed since childhood, quickly adapted. He is not the world-saving hero like Rick Grimes, nor the master strategist like Maggie Rhee. Daryl is a predator, a tracker, and the sharpest sword protecting those he considers family. Daryl's survival ability and physicality are peak level. He possesses extraordinary endurance, not in the sense of being able to lift tons of weight, but in the sense that he can walk dozens of kilometers every day, sleep very little, endure harsh cold, persistent hunger, and severe injuries without collapsing. Daryl's body is a map of scars, each scar a lesson in survival. He has an extremely high pain threshold, having suffered fractures, stabbings, near bites, and torture, but his will always forces his body to keep moving. Daryl's agility is supreme. He moves through deep forests with almost no sound, can climb, hide, and react to threats with the speed of a leopard. The weapon and symbol associated with Daryl is the crossbow. In a world where gunshots are an invitation to death from both humans and the undead, the crossbow is the perfect tool. It is silent. The bolts can be retrieved and reused, and it delivers lethal damage if it hits weak points. Daryl does not just shoot the crossbow, he becomes one with it. He can hit moving targets at long range, shoot through multiple layers of protection, and even use it in close quarters combat when out of bolts. Besides the crossbow, Daryl is a master of the combat knife. He uses hunting knives and daggers with brutal, practical fighting techniques, aiming directly at fatal points like the eyes, throat, and arteries. When the situation demands, Daryl is also proficient with rifles, pistols, and even machine guns, but he always prioritizes silence and calculation. Daryl's tracking skill is unparalleled in the Walking Dead universe. He can read footprints, identify the direction of an opponent's movement through broken branches, and smell the scent of blood or the undead from a great distance. This skill turns him into a master hunter, allowing him to control the battlefield, set traps, and attack opponents when they are least prepared. Daryl does not fight with uncontrolled aggression. He fights with coldness, calculation, and absolute efficiency. He always seeks to end the threat as quickly as possible to conserve energy. He has an astonishing capacity for mental resilience. After losing his brother, losing his closest friends, and witnessing the world continuously take away what he loves, Daryl does not crumble. He turns pain into motivation to protect those who remain. In peak battles, Daryl single-handedly confronted and killed Alpha, the leader of the Whisperers cult, a brutal duel in the dark that Daryl won through patience and survival skills. He has also single-handedly taken down a massive horde of zombies, faced heavily armed groups like the Saviors or the Reapers, and always found a way to survive. Nonetheless, Daryl is still human, and he is limited by biological rules. He can bleed to death, get infected, break bones, and eventually age and weaken. His emotions, especially the empathy and love he has for people like Judith, Carol, or Connie, sometimes become a fatal weakness, causing him to hesitate or make risky decisions to save others. Daryl fights to protect life, and it is that respect for life that sometimes hinders him in situations requiring absolute ruthlessness. Now we will talk about the immortal killing machine, Jason Voorhees. He is the embodiment of vengeance, the curse of Camp Crystal Lake, and one of the most terrifying entities in horror cinema history. Jason's origin begins with a tragedy grounded in realism. Jason was a deformed, developmentally disabled child who was bullied at Camp Crystal Lake. Due to the negligence and carelessness of the camp counselors, Jason drowned in the lake. The death of her son drove his mother, Pamela Voorhees, into madness, turning her into a serial killer to exact revenge. But the story does not stop there. In the Friday the 13th universe, the pain, hatred, and blood resurrected Jason. He rose from the bottom of the lake, no longer a weak boy, but an immortal giant, carrying within him punishment for anyone who dares set foot in his domain. Jason possesses superhuman strength far beyond the limits of any Olympic athlete or specially trained warrior. He can easily lift a grown man with one hand, punch through a victim's ribcage, snap necks with a slight twist, and throw them flying meters away. Jason's strength seems to have no upper limit, and he never knows fatigue. His muscles and bones are denser and many times harder than a normal human's, turning his body into a living block of steel. Jason is nearly immune to all forms of conventional physical damage. He can be shot dozens of times, stabbed, slashed, severely burned, and even blown up, but he will not die. Wounds that cannot kill him only slow him down for a moment before he continues walking at a steady pace. Jason's pain tolerance. He does not have a nervous system that feeds back pain in the human way. He knows no fear, no panic, and never retreats. Jason is a pure killing machine, operating on slaughter instinct and vague memories of his mother. He does not speak, does not negotiate, and has no mercy whatsoever. The gaze behind the iconic hockey mask is emptiness, coldness, and deadness. And Jason's favorite and symbolic weapon is the machete. For Jason, the machete is not just a slashing tool, but an extension of his body. He uses it with astonishing brutality and efficiency, able to decapitate, sever limbs, or cleave victims in half with a single swing. However, Jason does not limit himself to the machete. He is a master of using the surrounding environment as a weapon. He can use axes, chainsaws, spear guns, ropes, and anything within reach to kill. He is also proficient in using firearms when necessary, though he generally prefers killing methods that are more personal and direct. One of the most terrifying characteristics of Jason, and the thing that makes his power complex, Jason has the ability to appear in places he logically could not have reached in time. He often walks at a slow pace, yet always catches up to victims who are running for their lives. Many consider this a flaw, but it is seen as a form of short-range teleportation or a supernatural spatial awareness. Jason has a spiritual connection to Camp Crystal Lake. He is stronger, faster, and more immortal when in his own woods. He can sense the fear of his victims and use that to hunt them. Jason has undergone countless deaths and resurrections. He has been stabbed dozens of times, shot in the head, decapitated, blown up by missiles, and bound and sunk to the bottom of the lake for decades. But he always returns. Only extreme supernatural interventions or physical destruction at a total annihilation level, such as being frozen in the cryo chamber at the end of Jason X, or having his cursed heart dragged to hell in Jason Goes to Hell, can temporarily stop him. Jason does not need to eat, drink, sleep, and does not age. He is a force of nature, an unstoppable catastrophe. However, Jason is not without weaknesses. His greatest weakness lies in the very source of his tragedy, water and childhood memories. Jason has a hidden fear and vulnerability regarding water, where he drowned. If pushed into water, especially at Camp Crystal Lake, he can sink and be temporarily disabled, although he will not drown in a biological sense. Additionally, because he acts on instinct and hatred, Jason is easily distracted by things that remind him of his mother or lured into complex physical traps, though those traps can only stall him, not destroy him. Confrontation. First of all, we have a confrontation between the pinnacle of human survival and the embodiment of supernatural immortality. Daryl Dixon is the man who has overcome all physical and mental limits to survive in a dead world. Jason Voorhees is an entity who has surpassed death itself, carrying the curse of a killer that cannot be destroyed. A battle between them is not a fair fight, but an inevitable tragedy when the survival instinct collides with absolute destruction. If we consider tactical skill, stealth, and adaptability, Daryl Dixon is completely superior. Daryl will take the initiative. With his master tracking skills, Daryl will immediately realize that Jason is not an ordinary undead. He will observe how Jason moves, how he kills, and quickly understand the threat. Daryl will not foolishly rush into a duel. He will use the forest to his advantage, conceal himself in the shadows, and use his crossbow. Daryl will shoot poison-tipped bolts or aim directly at the eyes, at the joints, intending to slow down and inflict damage on Jason. He will set up various traps, spike pit traps, snare traps, and even homemade explosive traps he learned during the post-apocalyptic years. Daryl will inflict serious physical damage on Jason, bolts piercing through eyes, rifle shots to the knees, or traps that severely wound Jason. For any living creature, including the strongest enemies in the Walking Dead universe, these attacks are enough to finish or permanently disable them. Daryl will utilize the silence of the crossbow and his hiding skills to continuously harass and bleed Jason, leaving him riddled with injuries. However, this is also when Daryl realizes the despair. Daryl will soon discover a horrifying truth. Jason does not stop. Bolts piercing through the skull do not make him fall. Shots to the heart only make him pause for a beat. Physical traps, even if they break his bones, he will still crawl forward with his bare hands. The biological logic Daryl has successfully applied for many years is completely useless against a supernatural entity. Daryl has no knowledge of magic, of curses, or of how to destroy an immortal like Jason. He only has the skills of a human. Daryl is very agile and skilled in close combat, but Jason is many times stronger than him. If Daryl gets caught by Jason, even just once, the fight ends immediately. Jason can easily snap Daryl's spine or use the machete to cleave him in half. Daryl can only rely on his agility to evade, but his stamina is finite. Jason never tires, never needs rest, and never makes mistakes due to emotion. Daryl will have to constantly move, constantly calculate, and expend energy until his body reaches its limit. Daryl can get injured, bleed, and if he makes a mistake, he will die. Jason, on the other hand, can be decapitated, blown up, but he will still find a way to come back. In the Walking Dead universe, death is permanent. In the Friday the 13th universe, death is only a temporary state for Jason. Daryl does not have any weapon or knowledge that can completely destroy Jason's supernatural entity. He has no magical artifacts, no industrial strength acid to dissolve him, and no way to take him to the bottom of the lake and keep him there permanently in a random forest encounter. And Daryl Dixon will fight with all the courage, skill, and intelligence that the greatest survivor possesses. He will wound Jason Voorhees more severely than any victim the Giant has ever faced. He will make Jason pay with fatal wounds. But in the end, when the bolts run out, when the last bullets are fired, and when Daryl's human body reaches its limit, Jason Voorhees will still be standing there, bloodied and wounded, but still unable to be destroyed. Jason's supernatural immortality and overwhelming physical strength are a fortress wall that no purely human survival skill can overcome. Therefore, in my opinion, Jason Voorhees will be the last one standing. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Thank you all very much.